My wife told me our marriage was too strong to need a fancy vow renewal, but I found the brochure for the venue hidden in her office, and the date was the same weekend she was supposedly on a solo spiritual retreat. It was supposed to be our 10th anniversary next month. We've been talking about it for a year, brainstorming ideas. I wanted a big party with all our friends and family. Clara, however, was adamant that we didn't need to make a fuss. "What we have is so solid, David," she'd said, stroking my hand across the kitchen table. "We don't need a party to prove it to anyone. Let's just go somewhere, the two of us. To Italy, maybe." I'd agreed, though a little part of me was disappointed. I loved the idea of celebrating us with everyone we cared about. The brochure was for the Cliffside Haven, a stunning, exclusive venue on the coast of Maine, known for its dramatic ocean views and elegant, intimate weddings. I was cleaning out the garage to make space for a new project, and I needed some of Clara's old filing boxes from her home office to store some things. As I was moving a stack of them, one slipped, and its contents spilled across the floor. Amidst the old tax returns and utility bills, the thick matte paper of the brochure caught my eye. I picked it up, my heart giving a little leap. Was this her surprise for me? Had she been planning a vow renewal all along? But as I flipped through the pages, my excitement curdled into confusion, then a cold, sharp dread. Sticky notes were placed throughout, with Clara's familiar handwriting. Floral arrangement, white roses, his favorite. Catering, confirmed salmon, no shellfish allergies. And then, on the page detailing the weekend schedule, a date was circled. It was this coming weekend. The same weekend she was supposed to be at a silent meditation retreat in the mountains of Vermont. She'd been talking about it for weeks, about how she needed to disconnect to reconnect with herself. She'd even packed a bag full of journals and simple, comfortable clothing. My hands trembled. This wasn't for us. This was for her. But with whom? I felt like I was moving through a fog for the rest of the day. When Clara came home from work, she was her usual cheerful self, humming as she put her bag down and kissed my cheek. "All set for my weekend of silence," she said with a smile. "You'll be okay holding down the fort?" Of course. I managed, my voice sounding strange in my own ears. "Are you sure you don't want me to drive you? It's a long way to Vermont." No, it's part of the process," she said breezily. "The solitary drive. It's all about the journey inward." She went on to describe the retreat center again, the yoga, the meditation, the simple vegetarian meals. Each detail felt like a lie, carefully constructed and rehearsed. That night, I couldn't sleep. After Clara was breathing deeply, I slipped out of bed and went to her laptop. I knew her password. We had no secrets. Or so I thought. I found the email confirmations for the Cliffside Haven. A 2-night booking for a Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. Sterling. That wasn't our name. My blood ran cold. I dug deeper, my stomach churning. I checked our shared credit card statement. There was a hefty deposit paid to the venue, and another large charge to a high-end men's formal wear store in the city. I hadn't bought a new suit in years. I felt like a detective in my own life, a spy in my own marriage. The next morning, I drove Clara to her car, which was packed for her retreat. She gave me a long, warm hug. "I love you, David. I'll call you when I have a signal, probably Sunday night." "I love you too," I whispered, the words ash in my mouth. I waited an hour, then got in my own car. I had packed a bag, though I hadn't known for sure I would use it. Now I knew I had to. I programmed the address for the Cliffside Haven into my GPS. The 6-hour drive was a blur of anger, hurt, and a desperate, pathetic hope that there was some insane, rational explanation. Maybe it was a surprise for me. Maybe she'd orchestrated this whole elaborate ruse to throw me off the scent. I arrived in the small coastal town in the late afternoon. The place was picturesque, exactly as it looked in the brochure. I found a small, inconspicuous motel a few miles from the venue and checked in. My heart was pounding. What was my plan? To storm in? To watch from a distance? I felt sick. As dusk began to settle, I drove towards the cliffside haven. It was even more beautiful in person. A modern structure of wood and glass perched on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. I parked my car down the road, hidden by a thicket of trees, and walked closer, using the landscape as cover. I could see figures moving on the terrace, a small, elegant gathering. And then I saw her, Clara. She was wearing a beautiful, simple white dress, one I had never seen before. Her hair was styled in an intricate updo. She was holding a flute of champagne, laughing at something, and standing next to her, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back, was a man. He was tall, with dark hair, wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo. I recognized him instantly from photos I'd seen years ago in a dusty album. It was Michael, her college boyfriend, the one she'd always described as the one who got away before she met me, the one she claimed she hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. I watched frozen as they moved among their small group of guests, maybe 10 or 15 people. I saw faces I recognized. Clara's cousin, her best friend from college, a few others, people who knew me, people who were now smiling and toasting Clara and Michael. They were all in on it. They had all chosen to participate in this charade, this betrayal of monumental proportions. The scene was intimate, beautiful, and it shattered me. This wasn't a fling. This was a commitment, a vow renewal. She was renewing her vows, our vows, with another man. I don't know how long I stood there, the salt spray from the ocean stinging my eyes, or maybe it was tears. I felt profound, physical pain in my chest. My 7-year marriage, the life we had built, the future we were planning, it was all a lie. The conversations about growing old together, about maybe trying for a child next year, about the new house we were saving for, it all crumbled to dust in that moment. I stumbled back to my car, my vision blurry. I drove back to the motel in a daze. I sat on the edge of the cheap, scratchy bed and stared at the wall. I thought about calling my brother, a no-nonsense engineer who had never liked Clara much, but I couldn't form the words. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. Arrived safely. The retreat is beautiful. So peaceful. Miss you already. XX. The sheer audacity of the lie made me nauseous. I didn't reply. The next 2 days were the longest of my life. I drove back to the venue a few times, from a greater distance, using a pair of binoculars I bought at a local gas station. I saw them walking hand in hand along the cliff path. I saw them having a private breakfast on their suite's balcony. I took photos and videos with my phone, my hand steady despite the turmoil inside. I was building my case, though I didn't know for what yet. On Sunday, I checked out of the motel and began the long drive home. I felt hollowed out, an empty shell. I arrived back at our house hours before Clara was due. The silence was deafening. I printed out the clearest photos I had taken. Clara and Michael laughing, their hands intertwined, him kissing her cheek. I laid them out on our dining room table, alongside the brochure and the printed credit card statements. Then I waited. I heard her key in the lock around 8 p.m. She came in, looking tanned and relaxed, a serene smile on her face. "Honey, I'm home." "Oh, it was so transformative. You have no idea." She stopped dead when she saw me sitting at the table. The evidence spread out before me. Her smile vanished, replaced by a mask of shock and fear. Her bag slipped from her shoulder and thudded to the floor. "David, what is this?" "I think you know what this is, Clara," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Or should I call you Mrs. Sterling?" Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked from the photos to my face and back again. It's not what it looks like. Really? I picked up a photo of them kissing. What does it look like? It looks to me like you were renewing your wedding vows with Michael. At the venue we talked about. On the weekend, you told me you were finding yourself at a silent retreat. She crumpled into a chair, her hands covering her face. For a minute, she just sobbed. Then she looked up, her eyes pleading. It was a mistake, David. A horrible, stupid mistake. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping me. You planned a whole wedding weekend. You invited your friends and family. You bought a dress. You paid for his tuxedo. How can you stand there and tell me it didn't mean anything? It was a fantasy, she choked out. He reached out a few months ago. He said he'd never stopped thinking about me. We started talking, and it was like no time had passed. He suggested we do this, just for fun, to see what it would have been like. It was just a role-playing game that got out of hand. A role-playing game? I was incredulous. With a celebrant? With guests? With my money? She flinched. I was going to pay you back. I was confused. Our marriage has felt so routine lately. I felt invisible. Michael made me feel seen again. And there it was, the classic justification. It was my fault for being routine. My fault for making her feel invisible. The blame shifting began, and any lingering shred of sympathy I might have had evaporated. I never made you feel invisible, Clara. I loved you. I built a life with you, and you threw it all away for a fantasy with a man from your past. I stood up. I'm going to my brother's. I'll be in touch through my lawyer. No, David, please. She scrambled up, grabbing my arm. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll never speak to him again. I promise. I peeled her fingers from my arm. You made a promise to me 7 years ago, Clara. You stood in front of everyone we knew and promised to be faithful. And then you staged a whole other ceremony to break it. There's no coming back from this. I walked out of our home, got in my car, and drove away. I didn't look back. She called me 20 times that night. I sent her to voicemail. The messages started as pleading, then turned angry, accusing me of being cold and unforgiving, of looking for an excuse to leave. It was a dizzying, manipulative whirlwind. My brother, Ben, was waiting for me when I arrived. He took one look at my face and pulled me into a rough hug. Whatever it is, we'll handle it, he said. I showed him the photos. He cursed, low and vehement. I always knew there was something off about her. David, I'm sorry. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer, a friend of Ben's. I showed her everything. She was professional, but even she couldn't hide her shock at the brazenness of it all. She advised me to secure my assets and begin the process of separating our finances. The following weeks were a nightmare of legalities and emotional whiplash. Clara oscillated between begging for another chance and raging at me for destroying our family. She told her version of the story to our mutual friends, painting me as a workaholic who had neglected her, forcing her to seek comfort elsewhere. Some friends reached out concerned, clearly having heard her side. It was exhausting having to constantly defend my decision. I moved into a small apartment. Ben and a few friends helped me move my things while Clara was at her mother's. The process of untangling our lives was like performing surgery on myself without anesthetic, dividing books, records, the art we collected together. About a month into the separation, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Michael. He said Clara had given him my number. "Look, man, I'm sorry," he said, sounding genuinely contrite. I had no idea she was going to such extremes. She told me you two were separated, that the divorce was practically finalized. She said this weekend was a way for her to get closure so she could move on. His words hit me like a physical blow. Another layer of deception. We weren't separated, Michael. We were talking about having a child. We were planning our future. There was a long silence on the other end. Jesus, he finally muttered. She told me you were emotionally abusive, that you had cheated on her first. I feel like a fool. We talked for a few more minutes. He confirmed the details of the weekend, the planning, the fact that her friends and family knew. He said he'd cut off all contact with her after my confrontation. He was just another pawn in Clara's web of lies. But I found it hard to muster any sympathy for him. I forwarded the gist of the conversation to my lawyer. She said it was helpful, but given we lived in a no-fault divorce state, it wouldn't drastically change the financial outcome, just strengthen my position. Clara fought the divorce initially, dragging out the process, demanding counseling, but the evidence was overwhelming. A few days before our final mediation, I received an email from her. The subject was the truth. In it, she finally admitted everything. She admitted that she had pursued Michael, that she had lied to him about me, that she had planned the entire vow renewal as a way of solidifying her relationship with him, hoping it would become real. She admitted she had known all along it was wrong, but she had been addicted to the excitement, the fantasy. She confessed that she had been secretly seeing him for months before the weekend in Maine. She apologized for trying to turn our friends against me. She said she was in therapy and was finally starting to understand the depth of her own deceit. Reading it was like reading a report about strangers. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no relief. Just a vast, empty stillness. I didn't reply. The divorce was finalized 2 months later. We sold the house and split the proceeds. The day the papers were signed, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even known I was carrying. A week after it was all over, I was in a coffee shop near my new apartment when I ran into an old friend from college, Anna. We'd lost touch over the years. She asked how I was, and for the first time, I found myself telling the whole, unvarnished truth to someone who had no stake in it. She listened, her eyes full of compassion. "Wow, David," she said when I finished. "That's horrific, but you know what? It sounds like you got out just in time. The person who did that isn't the person you married. That person is gone." Her words resonated deeply. She was right. The Clara I had loved was a memory, an illusion shattered by a glossy brochure on a garage floor. Anna and I started having coffee regularly. It was easy, comfortable. There was no pressure, no drama. We were just two people getting to know each other again. One evening, about 6 months after my divorce, we were walking to the park, and she slipped her hand into mine. I looked at her warm, open smile, and I felt a flicker of something I thought had died in me forever. Hope. It wasn't a dramatic, life-altering moment. It was quiet and simple, but it was real. And for the first time in over a year, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was going to be okay. The future was no longer a terrifying blank space. It was a path forward, and I wasn't going to have to walk it alone.